Hello everyone, welcome to Fishin', a Merfolk YouTube channel. This is probably the least Merfolk video I've ever done, so I'm gonna go over my favorite commander deck that I have here, and I just kind of wanted to show it to you guys because it's something I put a lot of work into, and I think it's a really unique deck. So this is a Jorkadeen, the Prevailer deck. Obviously you can see it's 5 mana for a 5/4 with first strike and Metalcraft, and it makes all of your dudes super big, so it's +3/+0 is pretty good. So what's unique about this deck is that it's basically everything is as foiled out as it can be, as it physically could be. So this is kind of just a unique way that I'm trying to show, you know, that all these cards are pretty cool foil versions in their own right, and there are a few non-foils that I will point out when I get to them. So the first one is Plateau. So this Plateau actually is super cool because so this is the one that I talked about on the show where the credited artist is Drew Tucker. So what I did was I mailed it to him. I found him, I got in contact with him, Drew Tucker Illustrations, and I talked to him, and he was, you know, he said, you know, go ahead and set it and I'll sign it. So I sent it to him, and he actually told me that this was not him. It was credited incorrectly by Wizards. They had lost his art, so they had, let's see here, it was Cornelius Broody. They had him put in some art, so I ended up getting it signed by both of them. So thank you very much to both Drew Tucker and Cornelius Broody for signing my Plateau. So I think that's a pretty cool, unique Plateau. I mean, it's the revised art, but I kind of like it a little bit better. But both of them signed it for me, so that was pretty sweet. So now the basic lands. So I have 8 of the plains and 4 mountains. And basically these are pretty unique. They were Japanese only, and they were sent to the their MPS promos. So these are the Boros ones, and they have them in all the guilds. So we're gonna just cycle through these here real quick because they're not super special. They're just basic mountains and plains. But they are pretty unique because of just, you know, having the symbols in them. And that's kind of what this deck is all about, is being all about the Boros Legion. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of all of these mountains. So then we get to the artifact lands. There are a couple of these in here. Let me move my stuff here. I probably should have had this a little bit better organized. Move this a little bit this way. Alright, so I mean, Darksteel Citadel is just an artifact land. Great Furnace, and Ancient Den. Just all 3 artifact lands that add to our artifact count, you know, for Jorkadeen rather. So basically, you know, that's kind of, we just need our artifact count to be super high, and that's what we want in this deck. So Mistveil Plains is just kind of a good utility land. It's a plains, so you can fetch it. Which is really cool because this is just such a great utility land. The art on it is kind of convoluted a little bit, but I mean, it's a good way to put things back into your from your graveyard back into your library, so that's pretty cool. It's kind of a neat utility land. I like it a lot. Seagate Wreckage, I've been kind of less than thrilled with. I kind of want to swap it, find a Gyro Reach Sanitarium, but this is just kind of a way to draw a card if you have no cards in hand. So sometimes in Boros you just kind of you flood out, or you just drop everything, you know, and then you have nothing in hand. So this is a good way to draw you a card. At least with Gyro Reach Sanitarium, you know, you don't, the requirement of not having any cards in your hand isn't there, so you can kind of draw and then get rid of like an extra land or something like that. So I kind of want to do that. Next up is Command Tower. It's a commander deck, so this is the Judge promo Command Tower. Super neat with the you know, the little promo swipe there. Next is Needle Spires. This is the you can't really see the date there, but that's the promo. So Needle Spires is really good in the deck because, I mean, it comes into play tapped, but it is basically a dual land, and you have 2/2/1 with double strike, carries a sword pretty well. So, you know, if for some reason you run out of creatures, you can put swords on Needle Spires, and that's pretty good. Boros Garrison is just kind of a dual land. It ramps, you know, you can pop lands back to your hand. It's just kind of good, and it fits in with the theme of the deck. Reliquary Tower, believe it or not, sometimes we do have too many cards, and Reliquary Tower is definitely a good way to keep all those cards in your hand. And this is the Judge promo Reliquary Tower here. Command Beacon. Our commander costs 5, and so I've gotten to games where my commander has been killed, you know, 7-8 times, and Command Beacon lets us put it back, or just like put it into our hand so we can cast it without having to pay like 17 or 18. Inventor's Fair is a super cool land, kind of a more recent card, but helps us gain a little bit of life, and then we can also just sack it to tutor for pretty much any land. Slayer Stronghold, giving a creature haste is super sweet in this deck, and it also gives it vigilance, so, you know, being able to keep up a blocker is pretty sweet. Slayer Stronghold. Alright, so we're going to get into the expeditions here. So I do have a couple expeditions in here. I have, we'll just go through them. So these are just the fetch lands, basically any fetch land that touches red or white. So we have Windswept Heath, Bloodstained Mire, Marsh Flats, Arid Mesa, probably the best one, Scalding Tarn, Flooded Strand, Wooded Foothills. I think that's all of them. Yeah, so then we're just going to get into the other expeditions that are kind of utility lands and that sort of thing. Forbidden Orchard. Oh, that's kind of cool. There's like the Hedron in there that kind of goes through, yeah. Rugged Prairie is also just, you know, fixing, so that's pretty sweet. Sacred Foundry, obviously we're, you know, Boros, so we're gonna run Sacred Foundry, and Mana Confluence just kind of adds, you know, fixing. It's fixing land is pretty good. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the creatures. Let me get them here. We're almost there. There we go. You can see my ugly hands there. All right, so first off is Hangerback Walker. It's a good creature that we can either sacrifice to something or just put out as a blocker, and then we get a bunch of 1/1s that we can put swords on. So getting those 1/1s is pretty sweet, and Hangerback Walker is just a good magic card. So Goblin Welder. Now this is a card that works really well in the deck. The Judge promo Goblin Welder here. We can kind of pitch artifacts and then kind of get them back, or if somebody kills one of our artifact creatures or destroys one of our swords, we can just kind of get it back, and Goblin Welder is kind of a good utility piece. Serra Ascendant. Now, Serra Ascendant is pretty baller in this deck because being a 6/6 with flying for 1 and lifelink is pretty good, and then once you start adding swords, Serra Ascendant can be pretty good. There's actually another part reason that these two cards are in here, so I'll set them aside and I'll talk about why when we get to later parts. So SRAM helps us draw cards. There aren't too many auras. I don't think there's any auras in this deck, but being able to draw cards off equipment entering is pretty big because we have lots of equipment in this deck. So SRAM is here, as well as his buddy Pure Steel Paladin from the Cheerios deck. So both of them, you know, have the ability to let us draw extra cards, but this also has Metalcraft and lets us equip for 0, so that is super sweet. We like that effect. Iron Mirror and his brother Goldmere, they're basically just creatures that tap for their respective colors. I liked these versions because, as you can see, it might be a lot of focus there, but just like the mana symbols don't really have their color to them, so I kind of liked that, and I just liked the art of these versions for the original Mirrodin. Block. Stoneforge Mystic. helps us tutor out any land that we need, or sorry, not land, equipment. I know what I'm talking about. So we can also just kind of put equipment into play. So Stoneforge Mystic is pretty good in that regard. Shimmer Mirror, you may cast artifacts as though they had flash, and it has flash itself, so it's kind of neat to be able to just kind of be able to kind of drop a bunch of stuff at the end of your opponent's turn, and then untap and equip and just kind of swing in. So Shimmer Mirror is pretty good. Danitha Capuchin is a 2/2 first strike vigilance lifelink keyword soup, and it also reduces the cost of our equipments, so which is really good. Danitha Capuchin is pretty baller. Burnished Heart, also just kind of a good utility creature. We are in Boros, so ramp is hard. So Burnished Heart is kind of a recurable way that we can kind of block and then sack it to get some basics out. So Burnished Heart is pretty good in this deck. Etch Champion. Etch Champion is just a beat stick, and has Metalcraft where it gets protection from all colors. So it's really good to just kind of throw a bunch of swords on and just kind of swing in. It's really hard to deal with. It's a good blocker. It's a good attacker. Etch Champion. This one's also a little bit dinged up. I think it said it was lightly played, and this was definitely not lightly played. Recruiter of the Guard. So this is part of that little, I have a tiny creature package in this deck. So Recruiter of the Guard can fetch up a lot of creatures out of the deck. It fetches up SRAM, it fetches up Danitha. It doesn't get Danitha. Yeah, it does. It gets basically most of the early drop creatures out of the deck. So Recruiter of the Guard is just kind of a good catch-all, but Recruiter of the Guard is pretty sweet. Brass Squire. Attach target equipment to target creature you control. You can do this at instant speed, so that's pretty sweet. So being able to flash this guy in, make attacks, and then if somebody blocks, unfavorably for you, you can just kind of move a sword, and that's pretty neat. So Brass Squire is a pretty good utility creature. Ranger of Eos. Now this is another one of those part of this little creature combo. So so this lets you look for 2 creature cards with converted mana cost 1 or less. So basically what we do here is we either play Ranger of Eos and get both of these guys, Serra Ascendant and Goblin Welder. So that lets us basically draw 2 creatures out of our deck. Or looking with Recruiter of the Guard to get Ranger of Eos to draw Serra Ascendant and Goblin Welder. It's not like anything super fancy or anything like that, but just being in Boros, you need to be able to draw out your threats, and being able to just kind of draw a couple cards out of your deck and tutor up effectively a couple cards out of your deck is pretty sweet. So we're okay there. Leonin Arbunus. I think that's how you say that. Artifacts you control can't be the targets of spells or abilities your opponents control. So this is a killer piece in this deck. So we can, play out our artifacts without fear, really, except for, there's a few Shattering Spree. Shattering Spree wouldn't work. Vandal Blast is the one I'm thinking of. But there's a few ways to just kind of wipe all artifacts, and this kind of at least fixes the targeted artifact removal. So Leonin Arbunus is pretty sweet. Then we have Sad Robot. This is possibly the most beautiful Sad Robot, but Solemn, just kind of good in any commander deck, but especially good in this deck where we can kind of recur him in certain situations. Tiana, Ship's Caretaker, is kind of a more recent add. Obviously we want this because, if people destroy artifacts, we can bring them back. I haven't gotten to play with Tiana yet. Even with the games that I have played, I have not drawn her, but I can't foresee this being a bad Magic card in the deck. Stone Hero Giant, another way to kind of tutor for an equipment, and then you put it onto the battlefield and equip it for free. So Stone Hero Giant is just kind of a baller. We like Stone Hero Giant. Baneslayer Angel, just kind of a beat stick, 5/5 for 5, flying first strike, lifelink. and pro dragons and demons, and when you put swords on Baneslayer Angel, things go pretty bad for your opponent pretty quick, so we like Baneslayer Angel. Sunny T, Sun Titan, my dog, and this is my favorite art for Sun Titan, the Heroes versus Monsters art, and you can fight me all day, every day. This is the best Sun Titan art ever, no questions asked. Sun Titan is just really good because you can recur a lot of our artifacts and all that fun stuff. Next up is Aurelia the War Leader, because getting additional combat phases is super sweet, so Aurelia is just kind of a good add here. Wormcoil Engine, just kind of a super value creature in this deck. We want it to die, we want it to attack, we want it to block. It's just such a good magic card. Wormcoil Engine is pretty sweet. Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, because we like to double damage. We like to, that did not help like I thought it would. We like to double damage. We like to attack, and we like to not take damage ourselves. So next up is Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite. Pretty sweet. Alright, so Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite has Vigilance, gives other creatures you control +2/+2, and creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. This is just the Judge promo in Phyrexian, so I had to make sure I had it pulled up because that is definitely not something you could read, but just a super sweet creature, and pumps your team and shrinks your opponent's team, so Elish Norn. Now this is a Russian Emiria Angel, and Emiria Angel is a 4/4 with flying, and it has landfall, where if a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand, but if it was a plains, then you can return that permanent to the battlefield. So then this is any permanent, no restrictions. So Emiria Angel is just stupid good in the deck. It's a value engine, and plus it's a 4/4 flyer, so you know it's just kind of good on its own there. And you can set this up so you can get multiple permanents in a turn. You know, being able to like pull a fetch land out. So like you play a land, you play a plains, you put a fetch land back into play, then you crack the fetch and you get another plains out of your deck, and it's just super valuable. So you know, good stuff there. Last creature is Avacyn, Angel of Hope. There's nothing I can say about this that nobody else has said. It's just a dumb magic card. It's super good and super powerful. And you play Avacyn if you can, and just an 8/8 beat stick and makes your permanents indestructible. So that's pretty all right in my book. All right, that's it for the creatures. Next, we're going to go into the artifacts here. Let me just make sure I got it. Yeah. So we're going to start from, and all these things have been in converted mana cost order. So we got a couple expensive fun things here. First off is Mana Crypt, just sweet value. Ramp. You know, we need ramp, and it costs nothing basically cost nothing to play. So Mana Crypt, super sweet. Next up is Mox Opal. It only taps for mana when you have 3 artifacts, but as you've seen so far, this deck is chock full of them, and I'm about to dump like 20 more artifacts into the mix here. So Mox Opal generally taps for mana. Soul Ring, because it's Commander and Soul Ring. Soul Ring is just, it's dumb. It taps for 2. You play Soul Ring. So Soul Ring is fun. Skull Clamp is pretty great. Lets us draw cards and cheap equip costs. So, and you can do things like if you know a creature's going to die and you have Brass Squire, you can move Skull Clamp onto the thing that's going to die, so you at least get to draw 2 cards. It's just really good. Skull Clamp is fun. Sensei's Divining Top. In this deck, you need to be able to figure out what's coming, because you cannot have turns where you're drawing lands when you don't need lands, or turns where you're drawing threats and you don't have lands. So this kind of helps, figure out your top deck and help kind of filter your draws. Sword of the Animist. It does buff your creatures and it adds to Metalcraft, but the biggest thing is that it lets us pull out basics out of our deck. So Sword of the Animist is pretty indispensable in the list. Mask of Memory. Now this is one that I have actually really liked in the deck because it doesn't buff any toughness or power or anything like that, but what it does do is it lets us draw 2 cards and then you only discard 1 from your hand, so it doesn't even have to be one that you drew. So you can kind of get rid of lands when you're later in the game. You can discard an equipment or something like that to get back off of a Maria Angel or Goblin Welder or something like that. Like there's a lot of ways to recur artifacts out of the yard, so Mask of Memory has actually kind of overperformed, and it's something that people don't target. Like that's kind of the big thing, is people don't know how good Mask of Memory is, so they're just fine. They're like, sure, Mask of Memory, that's fine. It's not a Sword of War and Peace or anything like that, so go for it. But Mask of Memory, super good. Next up, Mind Stone. So this is the DCI Arena promo, I think. But I just love the art. Mind Stone ramps, and then you can sack it, draw a card. Just kind of a good Magic card. Next up, Boros Signet ramp, and it's in our colors, and it's Boros, so Swiftfoot Boots is Swiftfoot Boots. There's no way around it. Let's see here. Lightning Greaves is the next card here. Lightning Greaves, just super good, protects your creatures, and so you just have to be careful because it has Shroud, so you gotta be careful about that. Next up is Loxodon Warhammer. Just kind of a way to get some life, give trample, which is really important in this deck, and just kind of an all-around beat stick of a weapon, so Loxodon Warhammer is pretty sweet. Next up is the Arena promo for Darksteel Ingot. When I first started playing Commander, I did not think that Darksteel Ingot was very good at all, and I have been slowly but surely adding Darksteel Ingot to every single deck that I've ever built in Commander, just because it's one of those things that it survives everything, and unless it gets exiled, which I don't know, like it's never important enough of a target for somebody to exile it, and it always gives you mana. So Darksteel Ingot, beautiful Magic card. Forebearer's Blade. Now this is one that I have not had the chance to play with yet, but it gives the creature Vigilance and Trample and pumps power, similar to Jorkadine, +3/+0. And you can just kind of equip it to other things when whatever has it dies. So if you swing in with something and then it dies, you can just kind of pop it onto another creature and you don't have to pay the equip cost, which is pretty sweet. Chromatic Lantern fixes our mana, and it also is ramp itself, so Chromatic Lantern. Next up is some more equipment, so we have Sword of Fire and Ice. Is pretty good to draw cards and kind of ping down ramp creatures or utility creatures. Sword of Feast and Famine is it's Sword of Feast and Famine, so you play it because a lot of creatures are black and green, and Sword of Feast and Famine lets you untap all your lands so you can replay all of our expensive stuff. Sword of Light and Shadow, protection from a lot of removal in white and black, and it gains you life, and you can return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, so it's kind of recursion. Again, you can sacrifice any number of our artifact creatures with Goblin Welder and then get them back with a Sword of Light and Shadow, so good stuff there. Batterskull, just kind of the prototypical Stoneforge Mystic pairing, and I love the promo art. It's just so great. It just kind of 4/4 Vigilance and Lifelink is just kind of dumb, and you can return it to your hand, so it has kind of built-in protection. Gilded Lotus, I'm kind of considering switching out for like a Mox Amber or something like that. Gilded Lotus is great. It's so much ramp. It's all the ramp, but it does cost 5. But then it kind of pays for itself when you get it back. and then Memory Jar. So a friend of mine, Johnny Crass, recommended Memory Jar to me. It gets you out of a lot of situations because you get to draw a card, or set aside your hand and draw 7. So you could like set up a phase where you draw 7, play a land, dump a bunch of stuff, and then at the end of turn you discard a bunch of stuff that you can get back easily. So that's pretty sweet. Memory Jars is kind of ultra good in this deck, and kind of disrupts your opponents as well, because a lot of times they do not want to part with what's in their hand, so that can help get rid of answers. So next is the rest of the deck. So we're going to start with the enchantments. So this is a Russian Sigarda's Aid. So it's equipment and auras have flash, and you can equip at instant speed basically, but Sigarda's Aid is just kind of dumb because it only costs white, and super cheap, and super useful. Next is Land Tax, which just got reprinted with this great art. Land Tax is a beautiful magic card, and Boros needs Land Tax to be able to keep up in the land department sometimes. So Land Tax, super good. Not very good late, but that's part of it. Now Outpost Siege is a magic card I want to talk about because it is a card like Darksteel Ingot that is just not considered powerful enough for people to take or get rid of. If they destroy all, then that's fine, but most of the time people leave Outpost Siege alone, and you always choose cons. Basically you get to exile a card and get to play it until end of turn, and because it says play, you can hit lands off this and just play the land. Other times it just kind of gives you an extra card each turn, so I love Outpost Siege. Most people don't, but I really like it. Plus it has this super cool, see if I can get it to do it. Dragon, cons, dragon. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. It was unique. And Assemble the Legion, I think is the last enchantment, but it keeps putting out dudes, and you can keep equipping them with swords and just kind of throwing them in. Assemble the Legion is just a super sweet card in this deck. Yep. Alright, so into the sorceries. Steel Shaper's Gift. Search for an equipment. That's all we need. Tutors what we need. Martial Coup is a way to get lots of tokens into play and kind of wipe the board, because sometimes you just need to wipe the board, and that's fine. And then this also, like I said, gives you a bunch of 1/1s that you can kind of throw swords on, and you're kind of okay with them dying. It's fine, just send them in. Next up is Wheel of Fortune. Discard and draw 7, because in Boros we need to draw, and this lets us draw 7, so super sweet Judge promo there. And then I think that's our last sorcery is Wrath of God. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. This art is so amazing. I think it's Titus Lettner that did this art. Let's see. Yep, Titus Lettner. Beautiful art. Wonderful card. Wrath of God. Good stuff. Scrap Mastery is one of the cards that is not foil, but it is signed by Dan Scott, sorry. This is a buddy of mine at the store had it, and along with the other part of this card, and he had them both signed, and I traded them for him, and now they're in my deck, and they're pretty great. So it's kind of cool to have the signed here. Enlightened Tutor is an instant. Search your library for an artifact or enchantment, so we can get one of our support enchantments. We can get an equipment. It's just it's pretty good in this deck because we have lots of artifacts and enchantments that are really good. Dispatch is basically Path to Exile in this deck, but it's good single target removal, and as long as we have Metalcraft, we're golden. This is going to help us out a lot. Next up is Literal Path to Exile, because sometimes you just have to get rid of something. You have to get yeah, just sometimes there's a threat and it's too much and you gotta just get rid of it. Return to Dust, it gets rid of artifacts and enchantments, and it's pretty good. You know, just do it on your turn, and you can nail 2 things and, you know, get a doubling season or you know, get your opponent's early ramp to kind of help even things out. All right, so these are, I think, the end of the deck. So Duretti Scrap Savant is a great planeswalker. You can draw and discard. You can sack an artifact, you know, and you can kind of cycle things, you know, out of your deck. And I have ulted Duretti before, and it is a wonderful, beautiful, amazing thing, and it's really hard to come back from. So ulting Duretti is pretty sweet. Last one is Kiri the Harbinger. Again, drawing, discarding, being able to exile enchantments, artifacts, or creatures is pretty good. And then the -8 is also pretty sweet because we can just kind of pull things from our hand, and even though we have to bounce it back to our hand, it's still pretty good. It basically lets us tutor for something, and that's it. That's the deck. So Kabling here, and just thought you guys would like to see the deck, and I like showing it off because it's kind of my baby, and Jorkadine is pretty sweet, and it's a fun commander deck. It's not like super overpowered or anything like that, but it is definitely super cool. Thank you very much for watching, for putting up with this Merfolk related video. But we will see you guys later. Check out the other videos on my channel and make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the great fish Merfolk style videos. Thank you. We'll see you next time.